Softness of the Lime. It's a book. It tells a story of passion and integrity, love and betrayal. The story is set in 1782 in the bustling settlement of the Cape of Good Hope. Traders, politicians, farmers, and fortune seekers compete for goods, land, and power. Battered and sold into slavery as a child, Lena yearns for the Madagascan highlands from within the confines of a master's townhouse. Now, to talk to us about the book, we are joined in studio in Parliament by Maxine Case. A very good morning to you, Maxine, and welcome.
Thank you, Albert. I'm glad to be here.
Now, softness of the lime, that is fatal to the bird. That's a piece taken out of the book. The Malagasy proverb that tells us about the inspiration about this particular book. I want you to tell me more about this book.
This book has really been a labor of love. It's taken me 3 years to write, and there were many times when I thought it wouldn't see the light of day. It's inspired by a story of my own slave ancestors, and it's one I've always wanted to tell. When other children were told more benign stories, I was told stories about slaves, stories of insurrection, maroon slaves, slaves who hid away from their masters. And I think it's quite fascinating now that those are the stories I was told at, what, 5, 6 years old? And so I was always aware of my slave ancestry. But the way my granny used to tell the story was a love story. And as young as I was, I knew that it couldn't really be love, because after all, this woman was this man's slave, and if he really loved her, what do you think? That he would have freed her.
Now talk to us about the character Lena, because that's the character you're referring to. What is it that drove her to be close or even attached to her master, Geert?
You know, I don't think she was close or attached to him. Unfortunately, I think a lot of the relationship was expediency. But I didn't see her as being greedy or having ulterior motives. She was a woman who tried to make the best of a bad situation. And I mean, how do you make the best of being a slave? So it explored her life before slavery and her adjustments to being a slave.
Now, this story reverberates so much in similarity to the story of the Khoi slave girl Ketua, or Eva, with her master Jan van Riebeck, and then of course her later husband, the Danish husband that she had, which was also the first recorded mixed marriage in South Africa. Is there a similarity or a connection to that story?
You know, I don't know the relationship that Ketua had with Jan van Riebeck. I don't think that it was a love relationship. I think there was a big age difference. I do know that she later married this Danish slave. I think he was a surgeon. Again, I think relationships at the Cape during that time were really a matter of expediency. There weren't many women here.
Yes.
So one of the questions in Softness of the Lime is whether the master would marry, and spoiler alert, he doesn't. So I think it's interesting to explore the parallels, but I do think that Lena's story and Ketua's story are vastly different.
So talk to us about Lena's story in Softness of the Lime, and what is the journey that that she goes through and that she's exposed to during that period with her master?
You know, from the very beginning, I wanted to speak about a slave's life before enslavement. And I think many books that deal with slavery as a theme don't regard the pre-history of a slave. So ultimately, Lena had very few choices. And in studying slavery, I realized that women were the brunt of it. So I wanted to explore what that life must be like.
Yes.
But
Now,
I knew I couldn't only tell her story. I had to look at what Geert's life would have been like and what caused him to make the decisions he did.
now, reading the book, it seems like the relationship between Lena and Geert changed dramatically after he got married. Tell us about that.
I think a third wheel is always going to throw a spanner in the works. I think part of me thinks now about Princess Diana's marriage that had been in the media so much, and definitely wasn't a case like that. But, you know, Geert made promises to Lena, and then suddenly when it was no longer in his best interest to carry on making those promises, he took a wife. And sometimes I feel as if I've done a disservice to his wife in that, you know, she doesn't get much voice, doesn't get much dialogue of her own, because I think that women at the Cape, white women at the Cape, or European women, were treated, you know, pretty badly too.
Now,
it really was a man's world.
Yes. Maxine, in closing, where can people get hold of the book, Softness of the Lime, and what next for you?
I'm actually busy working on a documentary based on this true story, and I would like to continue the story of Lena and Geert, whether it's through themselves or their children. And I must say that I'm really impressed by how the bookshops have come on board in promoting this book. It seems to be everywhere. It's well supported, so at any good bookstore.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much for your time and joining us, Maxine. And all the best of luck.
It's my pleasure. Thanks, Albert.
All right, that was the author of the book Softness of the Lime, Maxine Case. You can pick it up at your nearest bookstore. Now,